Dr. Sharif Abdullah offers a unique, hopeful, and visionary perspective on the persistent challenges of our time. His perspective is shaped by his urban upbringing of poverty and violence, his Ivy League education, and his work with impacted communities in America and in 45 countries around the world. His spiritual outlook is rooted in the consciousness of dozens of religions, faith traditions, and spiritual practices. Sharif offers this unique viewpoint, helping us chart a course that explains where we've been, where we are now, and how we get to a positive future that works for all living beings.
Hello, Sharif here. And today I want to talk to you about something that's going to come up in a couple of months and what we can do for it, with it, and about it. What I'm talking about is Martin Luther King Day. And this is the day when, as a society, we trot out all of our pictures and posters of Martin Luther King, and people get together and they start singing Negro spirituals, and you will hear the I have a dream speech more times in that day than you care to. And after we do all of these things over the course of 24 hours, we go back to our normal, which is not any of that, and we go to the spot where we can put King and his messages safely to rest so that we can get on with our business, which is none of that stuff. What I'd like to suggest to you is that there's a whole other way of encountering the people that I call my lineage. People like Martin Luther King, people like Nelson Mandela, people like Mahatma Gandhi, people like Václav Havel. We can encounter them and their message as though this is something that you should be dealing with right now. And by that, I don't mean that we go back and refight the civil rights struggle again. We have to recognize something that I think a lot of people in the society are forgetting right now in the clashes around Black Lives Matter. And the thing that we have to remember is we've achieved a great deal in this society just in my lifetime in terms of how we interact with each other, how we recognize each other's humanity, how we recognize each other's citizenship in a society that, at least on the surface, talks about democracy. I remember a time in our society when if you were a black person, the authorities could do whatever they wanted to do with you, and there was no recourse to you. You couldn't go to the police because the police were doing it. You couldn't go to the courts because there was no law against what they were doing. So the challenge that we have is recognizing, since the mid-1950s, since Brown versus the Board of Education, since the Civil Rights Act was passed, since a generation of people have died, those things don't happen anymore. The fact that a man like George Floyd could be killed, could be murdered in cold blood, casually in the middle of the street, is an atrocity. But it's a different atrocity now. We have to recognize that things did change, and change for the better. Those people that murdered him were arrested and are going to be tried for murder. That means there's still more to do. And if we don't label that more to do carefully, If we don't recognize what needs to happen now, we'll keep going through this over and over and over again. And I, for one, don't want to do that. I think that's a waste of time. It's a waste of talent, and it's straining our connections with each other. It's straining our mutual capacity to think that we're at each other's throats all the time. A friend of mine was saying recently a very simple phrase. He said, things are not as bad as the media points out to us. The media's job is to point out really, really bad stuff for us. We have to rise above that. We have to look at the existing problems, of which there are many, and start looking for the common solution. When there are few bad, and so very few and very bad actors inside of a police department, you don't get rid of the police department. What you do is find a way to transform the police department so those bad actors cannot be in it anymore. I was talking to, and I wish I could call the person's name and or the city they're in, but I don't want to hold this person up to unfair publicity. This person is a police chief in a city in Oregon that's not Portland. And I was talking with him, and he said, if there are any racial incidents that happen inside of our city by the police department, I know which ones of the 5 officers that would do it. I know who would do that. And he said, I can't get rid of them. Because of the civil service laws, because of their the experience on their force, because of the rank that they've got right now, there's nothing I can do to get rid of these 5 officers. And when they beat a black person, and or a Hispanic person, or someone of a different color, when they do that, I'm the one that will have to catch the heat for it. I'll probably have to resign because I'm head of a force that has them in it, and I can't get rid of them. Well, that's an untenable situation, and what we need to do is figure out how to change that, as opposed to saying, let's just take money away from the police department completely and do something else with it. So it's time for us to get serious about the issues, and time for us to get serious about how we're wasting time as opposed to dealing with the issues, how we're avoiding those issues. I'm thinking about the situation with the Titanic. After it struck the iceberg, there were people who were in the lowest levels, the levels where the water started coming in. And when they were at that level, they began to recognize, we got a problem. And they began to start looking for solutions. Now, the folks that were 5 levels up from them, they didn't have a problem. Why would they look for solutions when there was no problem for them? They defined the problem as how a problem affects me personally, not how it affects all of us. So they thought their problem was that the waiters weren't coming over filling their coffee cup as frequently as they were before. Why is that? When there are people in the lower decks drowning. So that's our situation right now. There are people in our lower decks drowning right now. If you want to see them, walk outside of your house and look up and down the street and see if you see any homeless people. So there are people that are in that situation right now. And what are you going to do? Are you going to wait until it happens to you or to someone that you love? Or are we going to exercise our compassion right now and get busy solving these issues? In our upcoming sessions, I'm going to talk to you more directly about what these issues are and how together all of us can resolve them, and how not together none of us can resolve anything. This is the direction we're pointing in right now, and I'm looking forward to walking with you on this path. So, thank you, and stay tuned for our next sessions.
You are invited to participate in the discussions and activities that will define a positive future for all. We are at the cusp of the expansion of our human consciousness, beyond the limitations of our past. Together, we can envision a world that embraces our human potential. Together, we can create a world that can truly work for all living beings.